Welcome, 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 everyone. Our next topic is on user focused test automation. So, with the increasing demand for test automation in software development, a trend in automated testing revolutionizes its design and creation to be easier to create, more focused to the user, and understandable for people with little knowledge of scripting and traditional automation. Let's get to know more about our speaker in this video.
Our next topic is about user-focused test automation. Our speaker has many years of experience in test development, test automation, product releases, and deployment under an agile environment. Let's all welcome WebFontaine Senior Test Automation Engineer, Noel Sinzioko.
Hi everyone, I'm Noel Sinchoko, a Senior Test Automation Engineer here in WebFontaine. I would like to welcome all of the participants, guests to our Softcon 2022 and thank you for having time with me this afternoon. For today's topic, I will concentrate on test automation, how we basically going to democratized automation testing or automated testing. So this will introduce or give an idea how test automation combines different tools and framework like building a customized software or customized workflow that make makes it accessible, easy to use, and understandable not only by our QA engineers, but also different people within our organization, especially our developers, product managers, or product owners, and even our business analysts. For today, I would like to start with this quote, which is published 11 years ago in Wall Street Journal. Software is eating the world. This was coined by Mark Andreessen, one of the pioneers of web and a co-founder of Netscape. And what he meant here is that software applications were now taking over the world. He said also that there is an explosion, an exponential growth of these softwares that we created or they created for us to use. It is now taking all of our aspects in our lives, especially our personal lives and our workplace. So with this, there is a huge demand for IT professional that is needed to deliver this. This includes not only software developers, not only analysts, IT managers, but also QAs and test automation engineers as well. This explosion of softwares, its creation are being driven by demands on the market where users or customers are finding ways to look for a more efficient way or easier to use and solve problems or issues that they encountered before on previous software iterations or tools they are using. So this drives the democratization of technology to be a trending topic. It just started around 4 or 5 years ago in terms of communication, but it was already happening long way before. I have here a graph that I am inspired by one of the TEDx talks where it shows what is happening as we move forward in the future and what we are seeing to be the trend in how software or tools are being used or utilized by different users or different customers. The columns here that you have see the discipline expert, domain expert, and the users so forth. So they are the columns that indicates the specialization of each users once they were using some certain tool or some certain software. So discipline experts, they are very they are using this kind of softwares that they were enabled to, let's say, modify up to the very lowest level of coding like assembly language or the low level programming, something like that. Then as we progressed with time, those users are becoming or converting into more specialized or more technologist users. So meaning they concentrate on a specific type of programming or specific type of softwares. So as democratization taking over or becoming an integral part of the development, what we see here is as we use modern softwares or modern tools, we are seeing a trend in terms of decrease in the expertise needed because you know that these tools that is being developed, they require only a minimal or a minimum expertise to use those softwares. And at the same time, this yellow graph, they are producing more tasks or creating more results, thus the production rate or the production volume goes up. So basically, definition of democratization means making a certain tool or services that is accessible to anyone or everyone. So in terms of democratization of technology, it was placing these tools into the hands of practically every engineers of or every people within the organization to use. So it's not necessary that everyone is mandatory to use these tools, but they have the ability to use these softwares, and they can create something out of it as their output, or those processes and workflow they created with these tools. They are helping, or it was helping them to deliver some certain task. Also, these softwares that has being released, it was improving some user experience that the traditional softwares or the old softwares were not have into. So that's why we have a trending topic also in UI UX. So more on focusing on the user experiences of these software and tools that we intend to use nowadays. So in terms of democratizing in automated testing, we are now focusing these ideas into the test automation. We're making test automation available and accessible for individuals within the team, where they can use it, create something out of it, integrate it on different platforms, or check and analyze it anytime. Common misconception on test automation is that it was the job only for QAs or test automation engineers. But the goal of automated tests is not only to automate test cases that are hard to manual test, or they are repeatedly tested over time, but also to provide easier access to the team for its easier execution and gaining results out of it. So different software tools had been developed recently or for the past few years, which target these goals. And basically, there is also a trend under this topic, which are the scriptless testing tools. So these scriptless testing tools are here to simplify what we are doing in automate testing. So scriptless testing tools are the tools that gave testers or automation engineers to upgrade their capability to automate their tests, making it easier for the update and maintenance, and to gain more coverage. These tools give us capability to automate almost any scenario, but not all, that we could imagine. And we have this flexibility to make any changes or make any updates that we require in our automated test cases. So some of it you are already familiar. For example, here we have NLP, also the recording screenshots. The most popular one here are the keyword driven testing and the AI bots for test automation. So we have seen them a lot recently. So I have here a, not necessarily a graph, but a picture, which is the traditional test automation workflow that more likely it's kind of old school on how we started test automation long, long way before. So as we have perceived in here, the most right side, the QA and test automation engineers are concentrated only in automating test scripts or testing those test cases. And they just provide test data or test results to the team, like the product managers, developers, the scrum masters, etc. Right? Also, early form of test automation, we are not they are not really integrated or not really have some connection in terms of continuous integration tool because primarily it was being used by software developers or by the DevOps. So there is a gap there. So what we are intended to deliver if we are if we want to everybody in our team to have access in terms of test automation is to have or to give them this capability or flexibility to first view on what we have done or what we are doing and then making it easier for them to understand it, right? So this democratization of automated testing, we are giving an overview not only for software developers but also with business analysts and product managers out there to have a little view on how we create these automate test scripts, also how we can integrate it into continuous integration tool or maybe the whole CI/CD pipeline, and then eventually having those results to have an easier understanding or analysis. So on my later slides I will show you more in depth, therefore we can see how it flows or how we can design it to make it understandable for everybody here. So let's start first with the test case automation. So we have different tools out there. So these are some of the popular tools that we are using. So this is particularly the web automation or web testing automation. So we have there Java, JavaScript, Python, of course Selenium. So the browsers or the web drivers and different frameworks that is popular. So the target for this test case automation are to simplify the automation itself to be created, right, for the QAs. Also, the target here is to make QAs or any other engineer within the team to learn and understand the script easily. So we are not necessarily avoiding, but we are slowing down or making the steepness of the learning curve to be more flat. Therefore, it will not consume more time in terms of studying it and learning it by itself. Also, what we are considering as a target is we can expand the test environments. So as we know, the majority of software development we have these dev and QA environments. Some have staging or UAT, right? So we can once we create these automated test cases, we can specify which environment we want to execute it and we want to test it. Then here, lastly, maintenance and update. So this is one of the important targets since this becoming becoming or having an easier maintenance of the scripts, it will benefit not only the QAs or test automation engineers, but the team itself, since it will not occur more time to study those scripts that you are not the one who creates, but the others, and then you can maintenance it or you can update it easily. So basically, designing test automation with preference and test requirements of its users. So the users here are the team itself, the product team or the Scrum team. So which we are giving a value for them, right? So with that, I have here some examples. This is the automated codes. So what I have here is that on the right side, I have the Jira ID of my test case. So this is a simple login test case. So once I convert it into my code, it is almost similar, right? It's like a documentation. So when the non-technical persons that will be looking into our automated tests, they can easily identify what this test talks about, right? So for this case, we have test case one in the left, right? So we know how this test case moving forward. So since the team has the idea in terms of, for example, this in terms of feature story, they can relate it if what we are doing in test case is the expected one that they required in the feature story. So there is some sort of balance and check in terms of what we are doing in automated test cases. So if we deep dive a little bit more, so we have these some codes, not so low level, but this is already a keyword driven codes. So what we have here, for example, in our test case, we are just using user opens a browser. We understand that what we intend to do is just open a browser. But in reality, we have a different setups in opening that. So this keyword here simplifies it. So making every compatibility that we've intended to do just to make it a simpler or simple language to understand on the end user. Right. So I will not go down more on this one, but these keywords here or these functionalities here, it has it can exhibits now the lower code implementation. So however, the framework that we are using here is just straightforward. You can just use this as it is. Therefore it has the easiest, not easiest, but easier way of encoding or scripting the automated test case that we want to create. So aside from these are some of the output examples. Like if I run my test case, what be the logs look like? Of course, most of the time, if we see a very, very long logs, it's very tiring to search on it, right? So luckily, we have some tools to do it, which makes our logs to be more readable in terms of non-technical persons. So what we have here is that the output logs that we've encoded using this on the left, and then the output will be on the right. So what you can compare of, so what I've structured in my test case, that will be the results in my output. So if I will be, let's say, business analyst, then I would like to check some user stories that I've developed or I've created and counter check it with the QAs. So I can just check these output logs they provide for me and then can see if everything goes smooth. So here, if there will be some failures, it can give you an easy identifier where the failures are coming from. Right. So that is our some overview in terms of automated test scripts, making it a more easier or more understandable not only for QAs, but specifically to the one that are interested viewing it or interested creating those scripts. So it's not limited in the regression testing. So actually we can do it in performance testing, in security testing if we have it. So some of the non-functionality testing, so we can apply those principles. So at the end of the day, these automated test scripts, the goal that we have now is not really to cater for the need of QA, but it's one of the goal. But we are also catering on how the team, the overall Scrum team or product team, may use our test automation framework. So what we have next here, still we have this graph, is the continuous integration for automated tests. So early on, we have this disconnection from automated test scripts, not all, but it's just starting trend that we want to connect those automated test scripts into our continuous integration. So this is a preparation for those who haven't have yet. So this is a preparation for a complete CI/CD pipeline that was building by software developers or by the DevOps. So as a preliminary integration of our automated test, we are now um, like say introduced to the CI tools, therefore we can create one. So it is also we can call the democratization of tools from DevOps. So not only DevOps understand these tools, but also different um, people within the team. So like QAs. So we are now starting to have this overview of CI or CD. Therefore, we can integrate on what we are doing right now into these pipelines. So for the target of this continuous integration for automated tests are first, we need to have a simple usage of CI tool to incorporate these automated tests. So you know that in terms of user experience, let's say that if the user find it's difficult to use, more likely it will not use it. So the goal of test automation in CI is to make it easier for the users to use this CI tool. Therefore, they can execute smoothly or fle- in terms of flexibility, they can do whatever they want to require in their test executions. Also, aside from that, we need to have a easy to learn and understand builds or pipeline concepts in here. So if the non-technical persons, let's say, they just know some overview in CI tool. So if they were introduced this kind of framework or this kind of customized workflow that we are making for them, and it was easier for them to use it, so more likely they can understand what's going on behind it. Also, aside from this, since we are trying to expand easily the test environments in automated test scripts, we also um, carrying it into this continuous integration tool. And then lastly, one of the, I guess, important thing is this maintenance and updates. So I have here an example. So for example, I have this TA training project. So what I have here is that I've indicated some builds that make my application executes. So uh, it's not necessarily that I can automate everything out of it, but it's more on giving the users an ability to have parameterized executions that they intended to do. So that was driven by the on-demand executions. Okay. So those using on-demand test executions, this was triggering or just executing test cases on their specified time on or the time they want to execute it. So basically, if I want to run something or my manager want to check something in the execution, they can easily trigger these on-demand test executions. So basically, it was well in TeamCity, we configured it in such a way like this. So there are some parameters that the user can control. Therefore, he or she can select what are the environments, what will be the included test cases, also the level of lagging, etc., etc. So this way we are preventing, not necessarily preventing, but we are giving the flexibility to change some parameters in the code or automated test scripts, and avoiding to change it manually. So like in traditional test automation, we are really changing it in the script and then uploading it repository before we can execute it in any other platform. So for this one, it was just a parameterized um, parameters that we already catered in terms of test automation scripting. Therefore, once we want to switch something or we want to test something, it was easily being input into the program. Also, the one of the important thing here also that we have did is we can select in terms of the branches that we want to run it. So here we have some master branch development and feature. So as we know, like software development, if we are creating new scripts, we are uploading it in feature branch. And then if we want to test it or if we want to know if our codes are working, we first run it in our feature branch before doing some merge requests, PR requests into the more high level branches like development and master. So it depends on the workflow or the processes of each team. So each team may differ in terms of what they perceive to be the branches or repositories for this kind of executions. Right. So now we have also the build triggers. So for example, I want it automatic. I don't want it to trigger it manually. So meaning I can schedule it that like this first trigger that we have or some sort of finish build triggered, meaning if the deployment into a environment finishes and it was successful, we can detect it separately and then run our test executions versus to that newly deployed environment. So there are many triggers. It depends on the CI tool that you are using. So we have many configurations or setting that we may use. All right. So with this one, we are having these triggers because some of the product teams that we've uh, worked on, they require such thing. So they want to have, for example, run once a week or once a day, or maybe they don't want a scheduled trigger. They want to just execute those test cases when they deploy new scripts or new versions of their app into one environment. So this can be useful for that. So these are some of the definition of the scheduled test executions, finish build triggers execution. So basically it's a feature or it can be configured in a specific CI tool that you were using. So for me, or for this topic, yeah, we are using the Teamcity. But I know that many or other CI tool out there like Jenkins, GitLab CI, etc. They have the same kind of triggers or the same kind of settings that they can use enable to satisfy the requirements of the product team if what they want in terms of these executions. Right. Next thing we have here, since we already have those on demand and we have these triggers, then if the developers want to already integrate it in their software development pipeline, since we already the test automation or the test automated test cases are already there just waiting to be integrated on their pipeline, so developers can now call it or maybe can now insert it in those development pipelines. So this is one, or maybe let's say this is one of the building blocks. Therefore, we can achieve those full automated software development pipeline. So it will start from release or commits, maybe, then it will build it, deploy it some environment, then we start to test it, and then release it on the next environment. So something like that. So this development pipeline always depends on the software development team. However, as QAs or test automation engineers, we are concentrating on executions, test executions that we can insert in the middle of that pipeline. So once we satisfy or once we have those previously discussed executions, we can easily insert it in here. right? So basically, integrated in software development pipelines, it enables not only for us, but this is more likely targeted for devs and DevOps to use our automated test cases in their pipeline. So now we have seeing this connection that not only devs and DevOps are using the CI tool, but also QAs and test automation engineers are giving value in terms of these pipelines. Then lastly, one of the important results at the end, we have navigating the results in our specified CI tool. So what I've liked about this one is it give us the not necessarily customized tabs, but settings that we can configure. Therefore, we can produce or we can reflect an output log or output artifacts. Therefore, for example, somebody in the higher management, let's say, like VP. So I'm not saying all VP we are checking something like this one. So like those kind of management, they can just check this if they have access to and know what's going on in terms of this build release. So in terms of automated test cases, they can easily check where is the issue, if it may have, what's going on in terms of the logs, and if there is a artifacts that is being showing, they can easily follow it. So I'm not saying that it can be subject to more, um, scrutinizing view from the different people in the organization. But the main goal of this one is to give them a overall view on what is being happening or what is being transcend into the QA and test automation executions. So it's more on like transparency regarding with this one. All right. So now we already discussed these automated test scripts, its overview, and the continuous integration tool. So what I've seen is one also the important thing that we have here is that data from test executions on how we can report them into the product team or or the Scrum team. Therefore, they can be notified that if there will be some executions we did, they are aware of it. Okay. So here are some of the test data results or tools or softwares that we are using. So actually, in test automation part, we are using this Excel and ECBI or the Power BI. Also, in terms of automating it, we are using the Power Automate. We are currently experimenting it. Also, the Power Apps and some sort of notifications in Teams and Outlook. Right. So the main target for this one is to send notifications to the team. Therefore, they will be aware or on what is happening after we executed something in the maybe in regression or performance. And also to create test data visualization for presentation. Okay, so let's have an example for that. So here, first notifications, we've created an integration of these automated test case results into first Teamcity by using this the curl or calling the webhook. So we just send some information and then it will automatically post it in MS Teams. Also, we are trying to have it in emails like the one you see in the right side. So here it's the same concept with a chat, but in terms of email. So in this regards, actually I was experimenting in the Power Automate since it controls some of the um, applications within Microsoft. So yeah, I have there a flow on what he will gonna do in terms there is a notification maybe from a CI tool or from a chat that that we want to announce in the team. So something like this one. So also here I have some test data visualization. So it's not necessarily what's happening to a specific test case, but it's more on the results of a particular executions every week. So what we can see here is that we can uh, check when our, for example, this is regression, when our regression fails. So there are red ones there, and there are small greens that introduce us to some failures during the runs. And then we can have visualized there that mostly those runs are being failed due to, let's say, bug issues or maybe environment issues that we have. Also, we can see the stability of the environment. So I guess this was almost a year, starting from week 6 to week 51, or yeah, week 51. So we can see when and where our executions are stable all throughout the year. So we can determine if we, for example, deploy something like majority of features on certain time, if it's produced some issues in terms of environment or maybe produce a bug or some of it. I'm not saying everything that is being the failures are being produced by the two issues, but something, for example, we need to update in test automation script, so it can also indicate on this one. Right. So basically, this is what we are seeing in terms of democratization or democratizing automated testing. We are giving an overview, easier to understand, easier to navigate to the product team itself, Scrum team itself, on what we are doing in test automation. Right. So here are some of the objectives that we have as we trying to do it in the organization is, yeah, empower more people within the organization to continuously involved in test automation. So this will give you feedback what maybe needs to be done with what needs to be improved. So it is a better way of having those information for us in test automation to improve. So also increase the rate of creation or using or execution of this automated testing, since everybody or that has an access can execute these test cases on their will. Okay. Also, what I've liked about this one is it drives user-based experience. So meaning if I am a user, I don't need to dwell more technically, so I can just know the basics and I can understand what's going on in these executions. Right? So with that, um, that's the end of my presentation. So I hope that not really change your mind, but adding some of the information or maybe some of the trending topics that we have nowadays that is involved in software development, also in test automation principles. So with that, before we go with the questions, I guess I would like to promote our company, Web Fontaine. So if you have time after this discussion, please visit our booth. So if there will be some remaining questions that may I not, or there is a question that we cannot answer because of the time, I will be there to accommodate those one. So yeah, maybe we can start some questions to answer for today. Mhm.
Thank you very much, Sir Noel, for that very informative session. So, all right, we have a couple of questions that we'd like to run with you. And the first question is from Miss Maylene Domingo of UST. What are the indicators that a testing can be done with a robot framework?
Mm, all right. Actually, that was a good question because what we have here is the robot framework. But I'm not saying the robot framework is the only tool that can do many aspects of testing. So let's say it's not only robot, but you are already using some tool. So the indicators that you can find or you can learn if this some sort of scenario, if you can automate it using that tool, is to find a community. So that is a better way, I guess, I feel, to find a community or to be involved in a community of that tool. Therefore, if you will be posting some answers, maybe posting some questions, you you will have a feedback whether your scenario is testable or can be done with those tools. So aside from, in terms of academy, you can also research if there are some libraries or functionalities that do that certain kind of testing, but I feel that having a community of those testers using that tool is way much better.
There you go, Assistant Professor Maylene. All right, our next question is: would you recommend automated testing with robot framework in government websites?
Okay. So in terms of automated testing, absolutely, I will recommend that. I want to recommend that the testing of those web applications of the government should be done. However, in terms of robot framework, yeah, it's not only robot framework that you can use. It happens that we are using robot framework here as a testing tool application or framework. However, it always boils down on what is the goal of the organization. So for us, for example, using the robot framework has a impact not only in testing but also for the QAs that want to learn more in terms of test automation. So for example, in these government agencies, all of the, let's say, QAs are no Python, so they can concentrate on such PyTest, right? Because you already have that capability. But for the QAs that were starting, so I also recommend this robot framework.
There you go. So, robot framework is recommended. All right. From Ryan L. Maniego, can volume testing be automated as well?
I'm not sure what volume are we talking about here, but I will assume that the volume is the how many test cases that we can automate at certain time, right? So here, if we want to automate those so much many test case, at the end of the day, we need to prioritize what's important first. Okay, so once we prioritize, for example, this test case should be tested uh, in every cycle, so they are the one that will be automated first. So in terms of executions, let's say you have these so many test cases that are being automated, we have different tools also that we can use just to test all of them in a shorter amount of time. So we have parallel testing, we have these Selenium grids, so that will help in terms of the volume if we want to execute those test cases all at once.
There you go. Okay, let's go through the next one. From Jadel, how about OpenShift pipelines for CI or CD?
Okay, so for the OpenShift pipelines, I'm not quite familiar of it. So the OpenShift. So what I'm maybe saying in terms of CI/CD is that at first we need to do the building blocks, right? So maybe it will be not necessarily connected already, but we are trying to create one at a time. So like uh, build from development if it is possible for them and release it into a certain environment. So for QAs and test automation, we are trying to figure out if we can do the same thing, but in terms of automated test case in this pipeline or using different CI/CD tools. So once those are possible, those building blocks, we can now think of a strategy on how we connect it. Therefore, we can have this whole straight or maybe a whole development pipeline that was automated end to end.
I hope you had a very satisfactory answer to that, Janelle. So, Mr. James Irvin Gurt of Stratpoint is asking, what do you think of the advancements in automated testing 10 years from now?
All right. So actually, this was a good question. So when I was watching the TEDx that I was referring earlier, you see that there is a trend in terms of what tools or what kind of tools we are using or we are going to have or we are going to use in the future. So what it says in terms of test automation is that we also ride on that trend. So that trend now is the AI or ML in terms of these developments. So it already started in software development, software application. So why not in test automation frameworks or tools? So currently there are maybe some, but of course it's not yet fully integrated or not yet fully used in test automation. But what we are seeing is those AI driven test automation where instead of you doing this scripting, so it will have maybe some sort of the AI itself can do a script for you or can do this automated test case for you. You just need to give those parameters and then the AI will create it for you.
Thank you very much, Sir Noel. Okay, this is from Monica of Stratpoint. Based on your experience, what's the most challenging or complex features to automate?
All right. So yeah, based on my experience, the most challenging ones are the new technologies. So these features, if it has been introduced to you, if you are tasked to automate those one, and these are new technologies, let's say, new concepts that are not yet existing, like breakthroughs. So this requires you to do an intensive research on what tools or applications might be existing already that you can integrate to your framework right now, and then able to put up like a proof of concept. Therefore you can present it on a whether this feature can be automated or not. So most of the time when I was in a semiconductor industry, so I was a also test development engineer there. So when I creating test automation in terms of the software, we always tend to do those researches because in terms of semiconductor industry, those are where the breakthroughs coming from. So the R&D, also in IT, that is some sort from the IND, R&D companies. Breakthroughs are coming from there. There are new concepts that you need to check or to counter check with the existing environment or maybe existing tools that we have to be able to put up an idea if these are feasible or not in terms of test automation.
Thank you, sir. Let's head on to our next question, which is from Reverend John of Indra, Philippines. If the testing involves multiple apps, can robot framework handle it?
Actually, this was a good question. So when we are considering the robot framework to be our tool, so we consider that we will be having not only web applications, but we are targeting also to integrate or to combine test of web API, mobile, and some sort of desktop applications. So this robot framework actually, I'm not in really endorsing it, but I'm recommending it that this framework can have different libraries that we can integrate to each other, like web or the Selenium Then mobile, the Appium API is the HTTP request, and then the desktop applications will be the Swing or remote Swing library for that. So yes, for to answer that question, yes, it can integrate a lot of things. So what we just need to do to do those is to try it. Yeah.
So go on ahead and try it,
Mm.
okay? So Shania is asking, sir, what are the features of TeamCity that make it better than Azure DevOps pipelines?
Okay. I'm not saying that TeamCity is better than Azure. However, they have some advantages and disadvantages to each other. So more likely, what I'm seeing in TeamCity is just a little CI tool if you want to basically start the CI or CD tool, and then the I guess the Azure pipeline, it's more on cloud based. Although TeamCity can do cloud based, but the thing here is that if you were using applications that is compatible with Azure, why not go there and just implement these concepts that I've discussed earlier in TeamCity. I know that these concepts also can be done in Azure, so it's not necessarily you need to use TeamCity with regards that CI/CD.
So it's like they have to weigh in the pros and cons for what
Yes,
they're going to use.
yes.
Either
So
TeamCity or Azure is beneficial
yes.
to what they're doing.
Yes, actually. And then since we are discussing this concept, so the concept really applies to both. So it's a matter of how you will configure this, for example, in TeamCity, and how you will configure it is Azure.
All right. Thank you very much. Um, all right. For the next one, does manual testing will cease after 10 or more years? I have a friend doesn't want to code or script. What path should they take?
All right. Actually, this was interesting question. So although we have a big improvements in test automation, manual testing, as per my understanding, will not cease in 10 years, I guess, or 20 years of our time, because we still need to do this manual testing. So currently, or maybe 10 years from now, all not all scenario can be automated. Okay. So there is still a part of those scenarios that we need to do a manual testing. Okay. So when that time comes, still manual testing is here, but I have to say it, but we have a more demand in terms of the skills of test automation or QA test automation.
Thank you, Sir Noel. Okay. Now, for Windows desktop application, can we use robot framework other than robot? What do you think is the tool to test a desktop app?
Mhm. All right. So for the desktop application, first, if you will be using robot, as far as I know, yes, it can have a desktop application. So if the desktop app is using like some sort of Java, JDM, something like that, we have this Swing library. However, many out there, or many also, or some tools or some frameworks can also test desktop app. I'm not sure if the VCS from Microsoft can use that Visual Studio Code, VSC, something like that, can also test the desktop application. So in that regards, yeah, there will be some tools that is being available in the open market right now that are capable of testing this desktop application. So most of the time, the source code of the application is the one that is being used in terms of test automation.
Great. There you go. For next question, we have from Sarah Jane. What are some of the features you look for in a good automation testing tool?
All right. So the features I've looked in a test automation framework or test automation tool is the its capability to handle the testing I need in a specific scenario. So for example, I have this bunch of test cases. Let's say this was web application. So I can have these tools considered to be my main framework or main tool to use. But at the end of the day, if I will be creating these automated test cases using this specific tool, and then I will hand it over or I will involve others as well. So I will be thinking also what or who will be the engineers or QAs that will also involve in those testing. So let's say those QAs already know JavaScript. They are very, very well capable of that. So I will choose a framework that is JavaScript related or like Spark framework or maybe some Cucumber, something like that. But if they are well capable, for example, in Python languages, so I can use this also robot or the PyTest application. So at the end of the day, it will always depends on what is your goal because here we are trying to figure out the main topic is the user focus. Who will be the user of our test automation? So if it's us, more likely we can consider what we know. But if there will be someone that will also be involved, so we are also thinking of that. What they can be capable to have or to be involved in our test automation as well.
Okay. So we have our final question. What other automation free tools can you recommend for web testing?
The other free tools that I've seen are, I guess, the Spark framework. It's open source. Also the PyTest. So aside from that, we have a Selenium, JavaScript tests, testing tool. So those are some of the open source. I know that there is a lot out of there, the tools. So just remember, choosing this tool, it's always depend on the end user. So this end user, not necessarily you as test automation engineer or me as test automation engineer, but the one that will use it once we already develop it or once we already design or created this test automation framework for our company or for our organization. So yes, open source will really bring a lot since we can experiment it freely. You don't need to buy something, but yeah, there will be a lot of open source out there. So maybe just uh, my last answer for this one is we choose robot framework because first we seen that we can integrate many applications in here. Also the robot framework have a not very steep, just a almost flat learning curve for our QAs to learn. So it will not accumulate. Maybe there is still time to accumulate these skills, but it's not very, very steep to learn it. So third, we choose this framework because it produces already some of the reports that we need to make it easier or to make it more understandable in terms of non-technical persons. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sir Noel. So, in the meantime, may I ask you to pose for a very quick photo op? I'll be turning off my camera and microphone, so please smile. Thank you very much, Sir Noel. Once again, if you
Thank you
guys
also.
enjoyed this session, drop all the emojis out there and to show our appreciation. So, thank you so much. So, just like yesterday, after you've had your coffee break, perhaps, since it's already 3 p.m., spend the time networking at the fluid space at the lounge. You can catch Sir Noel at the table of Web Fontaine at the lounge, network with the delegates, and you can also visit the virtual booths of our sponsors. Also, please, everyone, don't forget to change your profile pictures into your best avatars. This way, you can join the raffle draw at the closing ceremonies and grand raffle. And lastly, don't forget to grab your hoodies before they run out, okay? So we'll have 30 minutes to do all this, and we will see you back for our last sessions. Have a great break. See you in a bit.